I'll be honest, it's not Friday. I just had an email exchange with somebody, and every time I go through this, I always think to myself, I should just do a video on how to write an email. And I'm always concerned that if I actually did that, it would be insulting to many people in the audience. And I realize the more bad emails I get, the more obvious it becomes that no, many people don't know how to write emails. Now, when I was in school, I took a class in typing, a typing class, and, typewriters, manual typewriters, I'm not kidding. And some of the richer schools had electrics, but we had manuals. And in that class, we learned the structure of a letter, how a letter should be structured, and, return address and the salutation and all this stuff. And somehow that's all been lost in the mists of time because no one knows how to write an email anymore, even though an email contains many of the same elements as a letter. And so I get letters that are so strange. I get emails that are so strange that I like I said, was inspired to do this video. So here is how to write an email. From this point forward, if I get emails that do not conform on some basic level with this structure, I might just ignore them. So I'm sorry, but it's come to this. So here is how to write an email. And by the way, if you incorporate this into your life, you will actually get better results with the emails you write. And also, much of this is similar to how you write a letter, if you want to write a letter to somebody. But emails, we'll talk about emails because that's more common. So the first thing an email should contain, when I glance in my inbox and I see something, there should be a regarding line that indicates what the email is about. Okay? The topic, civil asset forfeiture, or even your videos, or your books, if you're writing me about a book. So subject line, just to kind of get my mind in the process of what you're going to talk about. So the regarding line, the subject line should be there. And so when I click on it, it should start by saying something as a salutation. Dear Steve, dear Mr. Lehto, dear Professor, whatever rocks your boat, but it should have a greeting. Now, I admit that occasionally I send emails to people that are very, very brief that don't contain greetings, but usually those are people I know very, very well. People I don't know so well or that I've never met, I will start with a dear so-and-so. Okay, so dear so-and-so, greetings, hello, hey. I'll even take a hey. But when you literally just start an email with boom, and you skip over that, it does seem like something's missing. And it also implies a level of familiarity which is actually not correct. If I've never met you and you just start off with, I watched your video and you're wrong, that's not quite how you want to get an email going. So you should have a greeting. Okay, dear Mr. Lehto, dear Steve, yo, Steve, anything but a greeting. Then, this is important, you should introduce yourself if you and I have never communicated before. You should simply say, I'm a longtime viewer, or I just found your channel. And what's interesting is there are people out there who get this right. I mean, I do get emails like this every day, but I get 100 emails, a couple hundred emails a day probably across my various email accounts. And the vast majority of them don't contain these two things, the greeting and the introduction. Dear Steve, I just found your channel. Dear Steve, I watched a video you did. Dear Steve, I see that you wrote a book. Dear Steve, I saw Jay Leno cracking a joke about you on The Tonight Show. Whatever it was, okay? But an introduction, just to explain who you are in relationship to me. Then, if you're actually writing to me about a topic, which if you're not, I'm not quite sure why you're writing to me, you should then introduce the topic. So, dear Steve, longtime viewer, I've been fascinated by the topic of civil asset forfeiture. I find it interesting. Or I've always been curious about the law. Or I understand you're from Michigan. I hear you like history. I understand you know a lot about the winged cars, the turbine cars, the Tuckers, Vipers. You know a lot. So you're introducing the topic, okay? So you're letting me know, polite greeting, who you are, and what we're going to talk about, okay? Then you get to the meat of the email, okay? I'm curious. I'm going to give you an example. I'm curious, why can't the police just pull over armored bank trucks and steal all the money and call it civil asset forfeiture. Why can't they do that? Now, if you sent me an email that just said, regarding your channel, and started with, why can't the police just pull over armored bank trucks and call it civil asset forfeiture? I understand you say, Steve, that's more efficient because I jumped right into it. The problem is jumping right into it like that. I don't understand. Are you asking me that as a hypothetical? Do you have more you want to add? And there's something about how out of context that feels, that even though it's the exact same question, without the, hey, Steve, I'm a longtime viewer. I've been fascinated about civil asset forfeiture. I'm curious, why don't they do this? And so it is better if you lead up to those introductory things and then lay the question out there. And the reason I'm telling you this right now is I got an email today. I wasn't going to do this, but I guess I have to. I got an email today from a guy who said, with no introduction, no nothing, check this out. And there was a link to a story. So I clicked on the link, which I don't normally do, but it wasn't a video link. It was a link to a story. And it was a topic I've covered in 3 videos. And what he linked me to was a story about a doctor who appeared on a podcast and made a statement about the law in Texas. A doctor. And the law had nothing to do with medicine. And I read that piece, I clicked on the story, and I'm like, okay, there's a doctor explaining the law in Texas. So I wrote the guy back and I go, there's a doctor explaining the law in Texas. Because, and here's the problem, there was no call to action. And a call to action is what they name it, where you have a letter that you explain a bunch of stuff, and then you put in there what you want the reader to do. That is me. I'm reading your email. What do you want me to do? So if you say, I'm curious, why can't they just pull over armored bank trucks and call it civil asset forfeiture? You could then say, could you address this in a video? Or have you? Because I already have. Or you could say, have you addressed this in a video? If so, do you know which video it was? Or you could say, how could I find out more about this? You could ask me. So the point is that you introduce the topic, and then you say, here's what I'm curious about. And then you say, here's what I'd like you to do, the call to action. So the guy who said, check this out. Now you could say, Steve, checking this out is the call to action. Not really, because I check it out. So what? Now what? What do I do with that information? So I wrote the guy back and I go, a doctor is explaining the law in Texas. So what? He then sent me a link to another website, didn't address the first email to me, and the second website was a law firm explaining a different aspect of the law in Texas. And the weird part about it was that that email also didn't contain a call to action. So I wrote back to the guy, because now I'm wondering what he's even getting at. I said, I've covered this in previous videos. I don't understand what he's getting at. He then wrote me back and said, sorry for wasting your time. And I normally would just delete that and ignore it, but I actually wrote him back and I said, well, it is a waste of my time. Because I don't know what you want me to do. Do you want me to address this in a video? Because I already have in 3 videos. Or do you want me to try to get this, what you're pointing out to me now, to line up with, in other words, are you saying that my previous videos are wrong? Are you even aware of my previous videos? And see, that's the problem, because if the guy doesn't know I did 3 videos, he might be saying, Steve, there's this weird law in Texas you didn't know about. But if he saw my videos, he's obviously then saying, okay, you're, I think, wrong because this doctor who's explaining the law disagrees with your 3 videos. But of course, you'd have to explain why you think a doctor would know more about the law than I would. But that's not even the point. He didn't say whether he'd seen my previous videos or not. And so I don't know. And so I'm guessing that he saw my previous videos a while back, forgot that I addressed every single thing in the 2 pieces he sent me, and then just saw these things and said, oh, I seem to recall Steve said this, but this disagrees with him. I wonder how he'll take, when the things he sent me were already online back when I shot my videos. I addressed them in my videos. So he apparently hadn't rewatched my videos. And so the point is that you need to have a call to action that says, Steve, here's a topic. Here's what I'm curious about. I would like to know your thoughts on this. Or does this conflict with your previous video? Or am I missing something? By the way, am I missing something? I will actually accept as a call to action because it's close to saying, would you please tell me what I'm missing? And so, could you address this? Have you addressed this? Where can I find out more about this? That kind of thing. And so the email should have that. And then underneath that, you put, thank you for your time, and you sign it. And I get so many emails from people where it's 2 sentences, and it's just, I saw this thing, I think you're wrong. Okay, you saw this thing, and you think I'm wrong. Are you saying that you saw this thing and you believe it over what I told you? Because quite frankly, if you saw this thing and you think I'm wrong, what's the call to action? Do you want me to take down my video? Do you want me to reshoot my video? Do you want me to apologize? Do you want me to put up a second video? Do you want me to write you back and say, congratulations, you caught me? Why do you send an email to somebody who says, I saw this thing and I think you're wrong? Who cares? I think you're wrong. That makes, we're even, I guess. And that's actually, I guess, the real purpose of this video is I get so many emails from people who don't even, I literally can't figure out why they're writing to me. I don't know. And so I think you should slow down a little bit. And I mentioned before that I actually am an attorney. If there's anybody in the audience that still surprises, I'm sorry, but I've mentioned it before. I am an attorney. Licensed to practice law in the state of Michigan, active member of the Michigan State Bar. Okay? I can put on a suit, walk into court, and represent other people in the state of Michigan. State court, federal court, you name it, I can do it. Okay, as far as the law goes. So, as an attorney, I sit at my desk quite often, and I work. And during the day, I check my emails. And I've made one of my emails quite public and said, if you want to write to me here. And so I read those emails. And so when somebody writes me an email, they should at least pretend to care that I'm taking a minute out of my work day to read the email and to respond to it. And by the way, I've got some people, I can name for you, off the top of my head, 5 people, I bet, who email me every single day. And I'm glad they do. Because they send me very, very polite notes. They send me story ideas. They follow this format here. And when I see them, I go, oh, it's going to be somebody with a very thoughtful question. I read the question, I send them back a thoughtful answer. But when I get these ones that are out of the blue that go, I saw this, I think you're wrong. Okay, why don't you write to your other friends and just go, hey, I saw this, I think Steve's wrong. Because they might care. You see, when I went to law school and then took the bar and passed the bar and then practiced law for 31 years, I actually do know a little bit more about the law than a guy who claims to be a doctor on a podcast talking about something that's not his specialty, which would be the law. And so when you say, Steve, I saw this thing with this guy's talking on this podcast, he's a doctor, and he said something which makes me think that you're wrong. Okay? Why would you write to me and tell me that? And you might say, but Steve, isn't it obvious? No, it's not obvious. It's not. Because I do get notes from people who say, Steve, I think you're wrong. And I go, well, I think you're wrong. Or I think I'm right. And they go, well, you're wrong. And they just want to say that to me. So if you simply want to tell me that I'm wrong, you're wasting electrons. You're wasting email. I really don't care. I've been doing talk shows, podcasts, YouTube videos, and stuff for so long that I've realized that there are 1 or 2 people out there who disagree with me on almost everything. Almost everything. I can think of some things that I so firmly believe are true that I'll take them to my grave, and I can still find you people who disagree with me on them. I don't care. So that's part of life. But I also don't run around notifying every person I disagree with and go, hey, by the way, I disagree with you. Hey, you. I disagree with you. You over there, I disagree with you. Who cares? You disagree with me, so what? That's what the call to action. I disagree with you, Steve. Could you address this? I'm curious. How do you get these 2 things to jibe, as they say? Can you? I'm curious. And if you phrased it properly, I'd answer the question. But the guy who told me that a doctor speaking on a podcast had a throwaway thought about something about the law in Texas, which apparently contradicts 3 videos I made. Guess who's right, by the way. But more importantly, why did you write to me? Did you just want me to know I was wrong? Because I don't care. I'm not wrong. Or were you hoping I'd explain how that guy said that and how I said it? I literally don't get this. I literally don't get it. And I know some people are saying, Steve, you do know what the guy was saying. And no, I wrote back to him and said, I don't understand what you're saying. What do you want me to do with this information? Some guy whose name I don't know appeared on a podcast talking about something and as a throwaway said, oh, by the way, in Texas, this is legal. And I've done videos where I point out it's not. And I actually read the statute in my videos on it and said, here's what the statute says. So if I've got a statute that says this and you've got a doctor who says the contrary, guess who wins when they go to court? The person who's saying the statute is the law, because the statute, by definition, is the law. Now, why did the doctor say what he said? I don't know. Can you imagine if I started doing videos about medicine? Oh my God, your aortic valve is upside down. You should know that. Don't even know what that is. So, how to write an email is extremely important. And I understand this is a bit of a rant, but I'm going to put it up before Friday, I think, because it can't wait that long. But if you're going to write an email to anyone, but in particular to me, number one, use the address that's at the end of my videos and is up on my website. It's steve@lehtoslaw.com. Yes, I used to have another email address that I gave out. I don't use that anymore. If you write that email address, I will not respond to you, and I will block your email on that address. So if you want to get to me, you got to go through steve@lehtoslaw.com. I'm sorry. It's the way I've done it because I want one address to be for business, one address for YouTube. So if you're going to send me an email, start with a regards line, subject line. It can be basic, but just the idea, what we're going to talk about. And then a greeting. Dear Mr. Lehto, dear Steve, yo Steve, hey Steve, how's it going Steve? Hey, Lehto's Law, whatever. Introduction. Okay, greetings. Then introduce yourself. Who are you? A viewer? A potential client? Somebody bought. See, I get emails from potential clients. I've actually gotten halfway through an email and not known if somebody was calling or contacting me about a video I'd done or because they want me to take their case. I don't know. I've actually had somebody send me an email and go, I've got this defective car, blah, 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 blah. Okay, where do you live? Arizona. Okay, I'm not licensed to practice law in Arizona. Oh, no, I thought you might want to cover the story for your channel on YouTube. Oh, it would have been nice if you told me that. So introduce yourself, introduce your topic, and then the meat of the message. That's what I call it, the meat of the message. So you put in there, for instance, I'm curious, why can't the police just pull over armored bank trucks, steal the money, and call it civil asset forfeiture? Why can't they do that? And then a call to action. I'd like to know your thoughts on this. I'm curious if you've done a video on this. I'd like to see a video on this. Is there someplace I can find out more information? I've had people ask me that. They go, Steve, I'm curious, for instance, what are the powers of the president? And I'd say, Article 2 of the Constitution would be a good place to start. Oh, okay. What about the powers of the Supreme Court? Article 3 of the Constitution. I've had people go, oh, okay, cool. I hadn't thought of that, or whatever. So you ask the question, and the question should have a call to action. Okay, here's what I'd like you to do, and then you end it by thanking me for my time, because that's a polite thing to do, and you then end it by signing off with your name. And by the way, I get emails from people where their email address actually says things like fake email address, and then they sign it, viewer. It's really hard for me to take an email seriously if you're not willing to tell me even your first name. If you really don't want to tell me your first name, just sign it Bob. In other words, I could think it's your first name. It doesn't matter. But I get emails from people who've got anonymous Gmail accounts with a made-up fake name, and they sign it with a made-up fake name. And you know my name, my office, my information, all that information's out there. And you can't even bring yourself to tell me your real first name. It kind of defeats the purpose of writing an email that's cordial in the sense that we're going to have a conversation. And so getting back to, I've mentioned this before, I actually charge for my time. In real life, if somebody wants to come into my office and sit down and talk to me, and they say, Steve, I want to buy an hour of your time, you can do that. It's going to cost you. It's going to cost you. And so people will send me emails, and I've gotten emails before, which would have taken me a half hour to read. These walls of text. It looks like the Code of Hammurabi written in cuneiform, but it's a little more difficult to read. And I look at that and go, who's got that kind of time? And I glance at the bottom, there's no signature. And I look at the return address, and it's just some made-up name. And it's like, why would I invest all this time and effort into an email from somebody that doesn't follow this format, and they didn't even sign it? So if you want me to take your email seriously, you should treat it as if it's a serious thing, you know? And don't get me wrong, I have people send me notes. They think it's like a joke or something. I thought you might just find this funny, or they send me a link to something. You know, you might enjoy this. That's fine. But if you send me a link, for instance, the other day, somebody sent me a link, a car was being auctioned at a Mecum or Barrett-Jackson auction. It said, Steve, thought you might like to see this. A car you probably will like is going up for auction next week. Scrape up a couple $1 million and you can buy it. That's fine. Sign that, send it to me. I'll glance at it, and if I'm intrigued, I might go look at it. But when I get the wall of 9,000 words of text jammed together with no paragraph breaks, and it's not even signed, I'm probably not going to read it all the way to the end. No offense, but you really can't get offended because you didn't even sign your name to it. So there you go. So there's how you write an email, people. And I'm sorry it came to this. And I get a lot of emails from people that do conform to these, which is absolutely fine. And by the way, I think I've gone a little bit too far, apparently, so I apologize right now. I've mentioned before of people sending me emails that were offensive, where I actually said, screw it, I'm not going to respond to that, and I just block somebody. And they go straight in the garbage. And I got an email the other day from a guy who goes, Dear Steve, I'm really sorry. I know you don't like emails that are heavily critical or insulting. So I want to ask you a question. And the guy asked me a perfectly polite question. Then he signs it. And I wrote him back and I go, I've got no problem with emails that are proper and polite. I have no problem with that. I wrote him back and said, thank you for your question. I answered his question because the guy followed these and I hadn't even told him to. So it's not that I'm against email. It's that I get so many emails that don't even attempt to approach the level of politeness that most people would expect in a business setting, because I'm sitting at my desk and I'm working and I'm reading emails and I just get an email that goes, dude, you're wrong. That's it. Dude, you're wrong. About what? Wrong about all kinds of things. What am I wrong about now? Can you clue me in? I'm not going to write back and go, please tell me how I'm wrong. So again, there's a proper way to do this. Please try to do it that way. And we'll go from there. So hope you don't mind. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.